Go.
Okay, I'm Paul Johnson, and I'm running for place 1. The person that's running against me is the Mr. Satterfield that had his CV, veterinarian, lives in Elgin and so forth. I live in McDade. I've lived there for 40 years. And in my working life, I was a policeman in Austin. I retired from the Austin Police Department in 2004 as a homicide cold case detective. Which I think gives me some insight. What I've been trying to get the Appraisal District to do is just follow the law. And in my years as a policeman and detective, where I was actually filing charges on people and so forth, I learned to study and understand how to read the law and how the law applied. That was criminal law, but the same thing with civil law. And how the law applies to real life situations, and how case law applies to the enforcement of the laws. In 2013, I started applying for open space appraisal for my property in McDade. And I'll go back. A little more than 20 years before that, I have horses, and I was involved with several horse groups. And I went to a horse group meeting, and the chief appraiser of Bastrop County at the time came around to my horse group and others to tell them how you can apply for open space appraisals with horses. And basically he said, horses, you must have a breeding operation. Well, I believed him. He's a chief appraiser. I figured he knows what he's talking about, and it's true. I figured it was true. For 20 years, I didn't even apply because he told me you had to have a breeding operation. So around 2012, I stumbled across a website that was from the comptroller's office. They were proposing changes to the agricultural manual that they use. And it says, there is no breeding operation requirement. All you have to do is keep horses. That's it. And that was reinforced, that law was reinforced by case law that was decided in 1989. So for 20 years, I had been paying basically $5,000 a year more in taxes than the law says I'm supposed to be paying. So I started applying for open space appraisal, and I thought it was easy. You know, here's the law. I have horses, and I have the right number and all the other requirements, and I've had them for way more than 5 previous years. And they turned me down, which is very upsetting to me because I see the law. Here's the law. Yes, I qualify. And they say, well, you might qualify, but you're not getting it. So I started protesting. I started applying again every year. They continued going on. They jumped up and down and say, you must have a breeding operation. That's not the law, never has been, and they have been instructed by the comptroller that there is no breeding operation and you shall not enforce that. Of course, the comptroller doesn't have any power over them. All they can do is advise them. So anyhow, that's how I got started in this, and I've been going on. None of my cases have been resolved yet. And then And when I was doing all this, I found out that's not the only thing they're doing that is actually against the law. I find that they're violating the law in other areas at the appraisal district. So I would complain, I would bring it up, I would go to the board of directors meeting and tell the board, this is what your appraisal district is doing and it's illegal. And the board always unanimously votes, let's keep doing it. So when I found out that this new law was passed that could get actual people that could represent the people on the appraisal review board, I thought that was a good opportunity for me to maybe make some changes in the appraisal review, in the appraisal district. It's on the board of directors, not the appraisal review board, if I said that wrong. But it's an opportunity for me to maybe get in there and start making changes from the inside, and that's what I was doing. There were three places to be elected, and I knew hardly anybody knows that it's happening, and I knew a lot of people that might have an interest in doing that didn't even know to step up because they didn't know it's happening. So I approached a few people that I knew had confronted the appraisal district previously, and we all got together and we decided 3 of us should run, and only 3. And amongst us that were gathered there, we decided it would be me and John Sabal and Bruce Mansfield for place 1, place 2, place 3. About 2 weeks, and then we put our names in. We put our names on the ballot. And a couple weeks later, there's 1 person against each of us on the ballot. And I don't know these people. I have met Michelle just briefly. I assume they're all good people, but there isn't a single one of them that has any history of standing up to the appraisal districts when they do something that's wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's how kind of I selected these guys, and that's who I am. And that's why I'm here. And I'm hoping that the people will go out and vote, because this election, this time of year, has a historically very low turnout. But I'm just hoping that real people will actually make their voices heard and decide to get people that will represent the people on the appraisal review boards. And it's the first time in history that's this happened. Forever, the board of directors members have just been appointed by the taxing districts. And this is the first opportunity we have to let the people decide who gets on. And they're elected positions, so they have some accountability to the people that elected them. So that's me, that's my story. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Carol, for inviting me and us to the forum. My name's John Sable, and I'm not a politician. I tried to get involved a little bit at one time, but there was a lot of controversy, and I decided I'm going to be a voter. But one thing I'm sure about is every year I go and I protest my taxes down at the appraisal district, and like Paul said, I've had a rough time with them. Last year I went to submit my protest. They refused to accept my protest form. They said it was an invalid reason that I was protesting. I said, okay, just take my form and stamp it and give it back to me. They wouldn't even take my form and stamp it. Ooh. So I went to a forum down in Smithville at the rec center. Fawn was talking there, the chief appraiser, and I stood up and I told her, I said, you know, I just don't think it's right. I submitted my protest and you wouldn't accept my form. And so anyway, she said that was wrong. She corrected that. But that's one of the main reasons I decided to get involved in this, and that, you know, I don't know if I can do any good in that office. I don't know really what it entails. It's so new. There's going to be 3 of us that are elected by the people. But prior to this, a taxpayer's only recourse against the appraisal district is either binding arbitration or district court. Now, in Paul's case, with the horses, he actually won in binding arbitration. But the county decided not to honor that, so he had to go to district court on his own. And the sad thing is, how many of us taxpayers have the money and resources to go to district court and try to fight for what's right and fight what the law says that you're entitled to? And so I really feel like I want to be a voice for the people, the taxpayers, to ensure that they have that voice in the decision-making process. You know, as far as I understand, you know, we get to hire and fire the chief appraiser, we get to take care of the physical part of the how much money gets spent. And I think a lot of education needs to be put into the people at the appraisal district, because a lot of them don't know what they're talking about. And Fawn, I have respect for her. I've had many dealings with her, and I like her as a person, but some of the individuals there, you know, it's just a real struggle. So my background is I'm a mechanical engineer. I graduated from Rochester Institute of Technology. I came down here to Austin in the early 90s, and I worked as a programmer. And then my wife and I, we formed a mortgage company. It's called Heritage Mortgage. It was a mom and pop organization, and our goal was to get people who didn't think they could own a home qualified and get them a mortgage. And we were really successful in that endeavor until, of course, the mortgage crisis hit, and then everybody and their brother wanted to sue us over no reason. But anyways, I do have a lot of background in hiring appraisers, reviewing appraisals. I know that's not part of the job, but I did think that ensuring that, you know, the law says that they should be following the USAP standards when they do the appraisals, which I'm clear that they don't, because when I fight them every year, the appraisals aren't based on that standard at all. It's not an easy task. It's a very difficult task to appraise all those properties every year, but I think they should follow the law, and that's the reason I'm getting involved in it. I'd like to thank Paul for encouraging me to run. John Sable. Oh, and if you would like to help me, I do have some flyers that my sister created for me that kind of explains the position, and if everyone could hand 1 or 2 out, that someone they know that'll vote, I'd be more than happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol, for inviting me today. Thank you all for showing up. My name is Bruce Mansfield, and I've been out here in Bastrop County since the mid-'80s. I got here as quick as I could. I grew up in Austin. I worked at the Austin American-Statesman for about 32 years, so I spent most of my career doing production for the Austin American-Statesman. I've worked various other warehouse management jobs, which included working for Mr. Alex Jones, which was interesting. My wife is Jeannie Cray. She runs the hideout at the Methodist Church, so she is the rock star of the family. Everybody knows her. You can't go anywhere with her. She's pretty famous out here in Bastrop. I have 2 grown kids and two grandkids, and I was working as a warehouse manager when COVID broke out, and was asked to wear a mask, and I politely told them no. So 2 days later, I started Mansfield Firearms. I've got an FFL, and my shop is at 21 and 71. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years, running a small business and meeting a lot of folks out here in Bastrop County. My reason for running for this position is basically what the other two gentlemen's are. I've had poor dealings with the ARB. It's just a really difficult task to do. You amass all the information that you go to present in front of the board, and it seems like they like their data better than yours. And that has been the case most of the time that I've been in front of the board. So when Mr. Johnson brought it to my attention that this would be a position to run for, I decided to go ahead and take care of it. So, or come to the table and run for this position. So in November of 2022, I went in front of the board, and this is my main motivation. I went in front of the board with my comps and some other comps in the area. And I got there, and I had two people in front of me. And I watched how the chair spoke to this couple and the lady that was in front of me. It was rude, it was condescending, and I just thought it was really unprofessional how she approached these folks. So I'm on guard, and I get up there, and I give the chief appraiser the paperwork that I had, which had all the figures on there. And the chair, and I won't mention any names, the chair at the time says, well, what do you think your property's worth? I said, well, I just gave the chief appraiser my information, and she said, and I quote, "We are not going to do the math for you." And that was my opportunity to let her know that I didn't appreciate her condescending attitude towards me and the other people that she had seen earlier. She told me to shut up. Nobody in this room should have to endure anybody on a board that you go in front of to tell you to shut up. It took me out of my game. I was done with the protest. All I could see was red. So I fought for myself no more. They rubber stamped it, you're done. So the lady that brings people in and out took me out and said, she does that to everybody. I said, well, she's not gonna do it to me. So I got back out front, and one of the ladies asked me if I wanted to file a grievance. And I said, sure, I would like to file a grievance. So she handed me a piece of paper, and I said, no, I want this to look like it's something more than somebody's just mad right now, and it's scribbled out on a piece of paper. So I'm gonna go home, and I just need an email so I can send this back to them. So, cut the story a little bit short. Apparently, it went in front of a judge. It had 90 days. It went in front of a judge. The judge basically said that she couldn't find any malfeasance after reviewing the tapes, which were a part of the record. And the liaison there at the board said, well, we consider this a closed matter. And I said, no, we're just getting started. You don't know me. So I basically tried to get a hold of the judge and reported back to the liaison and said, here's the information that I need to get to the people that are going to see this case. So I guess that got back to the chair, and the chair decided to go ahead and resign. So that's my feather. I took somebody down off the ARB that had no business being there. So again, with my fellow individuals that are running, I would like to make a difference. I want to be an agent of change for Bastrop County. I want to fight for the taxpayers of Bastrop County. So I'll ask for your vote for place 3. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay. Questions? You have questions for these people? Okay.
Mr. Mansfield,
You guys want to stand up?
when you presented your figures to the board and they said, we like our figures better, did they give you the courtesy of saying where they got their figures?
Typically, they'll give you comps that they have. They're prepared for you when you come in. They'll give you their comps. and that's where they like their figures better. I use comps that literally own the same stretch of road that's in front of my house. And I'll go as far as using other comps with business here, business there, just to show that there's some inequities in how they do it. And they're huge, they're massive.
Can I add to that? I go and protest my appraisal every year. I make a PowerPoint presentation with comps in the area and everything, and they go on their computer and punch up something, and I asked, well, where do you get your comps? Because they were different from my comps. Well, from other people. They come in and show us where, you know, that what the comps are, that they take other people's comps, put it in the system, and then if you don't, they don't have something that you have, then maybe they'll consider it. And so I was just shocked at that they don't have access to the MLS, say, I know you have to buy, you have to purchase that, but then they can actually have the real data that I took my time, hours, days in fact, to put together to try and make a good case for what, you know, here's the data that I could find. You know, I'm not a realtor or anything, I can't get my own, and I can't take out other people's time to get it for you, so I was just
It's frustrating because the average taxpayer doesn't have their database. You have to get on your computer at home and you have to hope that you find one that's comparable, and it can take hours, it can take days. So you get your due diligence, and then you go in front of them, and they throw out terms that you're not familiar with, and they vote, they quickly do it, because they move you through it. And that's where the disenfranchisement comes in, because you don't have their data, and if you do, they like theirs better.
In other words, it's a kangaroo court.
Well,
Yes.
I had something too. I mean, in my business, in the mortgage company, I know how to prepare a real appraisal. I'm not a licensed appraiser, but I've seen so many, I know exactly how it's done. Unfortunately, most taxpayers, when they go in there, if you listen to the proceedings, they talk about, oh, you know, you shouldn't tax my dog house and this or that. You know, they don't complain based on the facts. They complain on other issues, which fairly the board can't consider, but I can present them with an appraisal that no licensed appraiser could present. And I've even thought about hiring one at one time because maybe that's worth it. But at the same time, they look at my excellent presentation, John, another great thing this year. Love how you know, because my property's unique. I have 140 acres in a 1950s tear-down house. And there's not a lot of those that are for sale, right? And they don't come up for sale very often. So I go out and I go over to, you know, other areas that are about the same distance from the airport, like a real appraiser would do. I present them all this information, and I have a lot of real estate friends that give me the information. But they'll say, great presentation, but no, we're going to go with our numbers. So, you know, it's a very common thing, and it's a hard business to do. You know, I don't feel jealous about not being on the appraisal review board because it's a very hard thing. But most taxpayers don't even present a good case. You know, they just argue things that aren't the facts, and some education needs to be done there too. You know, that how to present a good argument.
Don?
Yeah. All of you have bad experiences with Appraisal District. I have.
You had a jury trial for one of them and lost. And my question is, how many current lawsuits do you have open against the Appraisal District?
The jury trial that I lost is still in appeal, so it's not over.
Yeah, it went to the Court of Appeals, you lost that, and now you've done to the Supreme Court, right?
That one is still in the Court of Appeals, I think. But I have cases filed for 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And I can't remember if I filed 2023 or not. Eight cases.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
And I think as far as your point about the ARB, I think we all will have a voice as far as the board members, as far as proving who's on the ARB.
Yeah, the new law, it says that the Board of Directors will be appointing new members for the ARB, but we've had zero control before, so you can't blame the current board for something that had zero control over.
I wouldn't, that's something that came out in the law, and she's exactly right. The appraisal review board members had been appointed by the county judge,
District judge,
this administrative district judge. That's right.
district judge.
That is changing with this new tax law. That part of it is changing to now they're going to go back to having the board of directors appointing the appraisal review board members, and they have to be voted by a majority of the board, and 2 of those majority votes must come from the elected members.
Yeah.
So the elected people will actually have a little more kind of veto power over who gets on the board than they've ever had before.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was going to follow up with that. The board of directors also can set policies, procedures. They can deal with transparency issues. They can deal with agenda items that come from the public or during public notice, public testimony. So the board of directors actually can influence what's happening on a day-to-day basis
No.
of the CAD.
No, all of that is handled by the appraisal review board,
No.
not the board of directors.
Well, procedures and policies set for the CAD is not.
Procedure and policies as far as HR issues, but not valuation issues. Those are set by the chief appraiser and the review board, not the board of directors.
Okay,
Can
so-
I ask a question?
Yes.
So, let's say I went down there and said, I want to see my comps. And they won't give them to me. You're supposed to give me those comps. I want to
Absolutely.
know what you're using against me,
Absolutely.
and they don't give them to me. So-
Absolutely, and I think this is why this law was enacted, to put the review board under the board of directors versus a district judge. I think that Reva Towsey Corbett is a wonderful judge, and I think she's very fair. We all know her as a very conservative, but she does not live here. She doesn't know the people. She doesn't have hands-on in Bastrop County. That is being taken away from them and put back in the hands of the people that are on the board of directors. We still won't have any influence on how they make their rulings, how they treat
Right,
people.
well, what they say it's worth or whatever.
Right, but we will have
What
the
they're
ability to
supposed to
remove them if we get complaints where we did not have that ability before.
So that is dealing
So
with
that
how
is
they treat
policy.
people.
How
Yeah.
they treat people,
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And
Right.
from a personal point of view, all you need to do is protest your value, go to the informal hearing, and then ask for an ARB hearing. And I think it's 24 hours before the ARB hearing, they have to provide that information to you, either email or, but you don't have to go to the ARB meeting.
Protest. I'm an appraiser.
Yeah.
By the way,
knows.
and honestly, they should give you that when you first protest. Because don't you also need time to look at what they got and have a chance to?
Well, and what they'll say is they emailed it to you, but you
No,
may
they
not get
never-
it.
They don't give it to me. And, you know, they usually give me a little something when I go in there, but I don't like going in there because they treat you really bad.
That,
The
You know,
burden
I'm
of
talking about
proof
the
should
informal
be
hearing
on
also.
them, not
Right.
you.
So hang on a second. Ellen, because you're in this every day.
Yes.
So that kind of thing, isn't that a policy that the board of directors would then deal with as far as, that's a transparency issue with giving you your information? I'll tell you, in my case, somebody's arbitrarily changed my name on my property record. When I got married, I did not change my name when I got married. So wouldn't that kind of a policy, like you don't do that without proof of a name change? Wouldn't that kind of policy come under the board of directors? That doesn't have anything to do with value, it has to do with the database.
That there is, the chief appraiser sets a standard operating procedure. As far as that goes, we do approve that. If it's not being followed, that is not under our purview. Of course, we can talk to our chief appraiser and say, we're hearing this, You know, are you taking care of your employees? And if we don't feel like the chief appraiser's adequately doing their job, then of course we can discipline them.
So that's something that we could
But-
go to citizen elected members and say,
Yeah, and I'm a citizen elected,
Yeah.
a member too.
Right.
Just so y'all know. I am voted, so there's gonna be the 5 appointed and 4 elected, and I am one of the 4. So I just am not, I'm ex officio, but I am an elected official on that
right,
board
right.
also.
But that gives us 3
Direct
citizens
contact.
to go
Direct
to with
contact.
those kinds of, not number issues, not value
Correct.
issues, but those kinds of
Policy
issues.
issues.
Okay, now I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify that, because
Yeah.
that's a board of directors, and then under that, the appraisal board. So you don't have to go to court for every single one of these crazy things
I'd like
that
to
takes
respond to
place.
this lady in the back.
Yeah.
What you were saying that, you know, you go to the ARB, they're required to give you this, you ask for the comps, they don't give you that. That's in the law. They're required to do that. And that's the type of things that I want to prevent from ever happening. I want to make the appraisal review board follow the law. And it's in the law. They have to do that. And when they don't, what happens? Nothing.
Richard?
Anyhow, that's just one example of the laws that I'm trying to get them to comply with.
At what point are they required to give you these comps? In other words, before the meeting?
If you ask for them, they're supposed to give them to you 14 days ahead of time.
At the informal hearing?
Not for the informal. There's no particular requirement for the informal.
I think there should be.
It's for the formal one.
Okay, that's what I thought.
If you request them, they have to give them at least 14 days ahead of time.
Okay. Carol?
All right. Give the explanation, and as the board, you all are going to, basically, you are in charge of the chief appraisal person, all right? You're not going to get involved with our complaints. However, you are going to be involved with the chief person. At that top level, how are each of you going to handle to ensure that the compliance is being done by the top guy, and then it's trickling down? What is y'all's strategy to ensure that, one, that the community is treated with respect and manners, 2, that the chief guy is doing his or her job, and if not, y'all can't come down into the weeds. You gotta stay up high. So how are you all going to handle that without trying to get down into the weeds?
Well, I think us 3 have sort of formed a consensus of opinion that, you know, we have 3 strong votes as far as wanting to be the taxpayers' liaison there. As far as what we actually do, I think it's going to be a little bit of a learning process, because that whole new thing, it's a whole new process, you know, having 3 elected people on the board. So
I'm assuming that we would, at some point, if we're on the board, we're going to see the complaints. That would be something that would come to us. And then we would follow the rules as far as taking care of issues. It's just like anything else. The more complaints that you get about one person, the more validity you got. And these are recorded. When that lady told me to shut up in that meeting, that's a recorded event. So the judge could listen to that. And of course, the judge came back and said she couldn't find any due cause to remove her from the board. She did remove her from the chair. Well, your problem's still there. It hasn't gone away. So hopefully, we can make a change with that.
All right. Ellen, is the chief appraiser under contract or an employee that's hired? And if so, who's doing that hiring?
There is no contract. It is an employment just like any other employment in the state of Texas, and it is the board of directors that hires, fires, and disciplines.
Okay. See, so that's, I think, an answer to your question. They hire, they fire, they discipline. And so the citizenry will have some input into that. And then the majority issue, okay, I'm a little bit of a crazy person here. I went and read SB 2. Okay, so I went and read the law, and if you want to, you got a little piece of paper on your chair with a link, capital Texas, with the link to SB 2, okay? So SB 2 says when you have to have a majority vote, 2 of that majority have to be the citizen members.
I think it's just for
For,
Appointing the
ARP
appraisal,
members.
yeah.
Correct.
Other votes.
correct, but that's the key one. That's the key one. So on that appointment, if you only can get one out of the 3 citizen members to vote, that person's not going to get appointed. So that gives those 2 people, well, all 3 of them, a fair amount of power as to who's sitting on that board of directors.
Yeah.
Yes.
And on those lines, I'd like to encourage anyone who has extra time to run for those boards. We need reasonable-minded neighbors that are hearing each other's board. It's not a paid position, but you do get compensated there's a little compensation for your gas and your meal and all of that stuff. So yeah, if anyone's interested in getting involved in the appraisal review board, there, will be openings, we'll advertise, we'll get the information out, and people
Right.
like us can
Right.
join those boards and hear from our neighbors.
And one thing I like-
Complaints.
You have to be a citizen of Bastrop County?
Yes.
Like, okay.
And one thing I like to do too is maybe, possibly get those people a little more education too, as far as what the standards are that the appraisal district's supposed to be operating to.
The Secretary of
Right.
State mandates their training.
Right.
They mandate
Yeah.
that, so.
And I can tell you, Ellen has come out and been a speaker both at this group and at another group that we have, the little
Yeah.
GOP club, our little dinner club. Ellen's come out and spoken at both. And if you 3 get elected, if those 3 get elected, if 2-1, whoever gets elected, you will be here again. You will at least be invited. I hope you will come, because it's pretty evident that people don't understand the process.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say, I'll express my opinion. I have a lot of time in local government and a lot of time as an elected official. And it's important to me that those people put their shoes and socks on the same way every one of us does.
Amen.
And they should be, when you come in the door, they shouldn't be saying, no, no, no. You're paying their salary. They should be telling you, here's the process, and helping you understand that process. So hopefully that's what we get to. Dominica?
I want to play off a little bit of what you're saying. Went through a wonderful kind of talk with Fawn about the process. And while I appreciate that the process is a little more transparent, we don't have access to the information that they're going to be using. So apparently they can't use Redfin and Zillow and all those things that we, the people, tend to use to get our kind of home values. They're using Equifax or some kind of TransUnion, credit reporting agency. We don't have access to each other's credit reports. And so how, as a board member, how would you find a way to help that process? It's not just the process being transparent. How do we fight that if we go, we like our numbers better?
I think some of it's Texas law, it's a non-reporting state, so when your deed's recorded, it doesn't record your sales price. So that's not public information. So then you have third parties like the realtors, MLS, and you have Equifax and these other third parties that gather this information. And the appraisal district tries to trick everyone that buys a new home by sending you a form asking you how much it should be, how much you purchase it for. Now, you should just throw that form away, because you should never give them the enemy that information. But at the same time, and that's perfectly legal, you don't have to give them that information, but that's how the majority of what they collect. And it's not an easy process. Look at how many appraisals there are out there, and trying to treat each one fairly it's a very difficult task. Maybe artificial intelligence, maybe that's something as far as the board should consider, making it more advanced the way they do it now. It's pretty rough shot. Like on my property, I have 140 acres, and they use properties with 1 and 2 acres, and somehow extrapolate the value of the rest of my land, which is impossible. That's not fair. Doesn't meet the standards that the U.S. appraisal standards, but that's what they do currently.
Well, and please understand, if I understand correctly, it's the state's kind of tying their hands as well as to what they can use, and so.
And partly, I think when they give you that answer, they can't give you that information is because they have received it from a third party. They can't just give you that information because they have licensing agreements as far as that data. But at the same time, the law does stay within 14 days of you requesting it in writing. They have to provide it, and they will. in fact. Well, they at least say they email it, but sometimes it comes back and they say they emailed it, it's sort of like mailing a letter with just your name on it,
Yes.
Going forward, and this is an assumption that, as we move forward, that you guys get in, and is there any way to have some classes that where the citizens can come and see, and be educated on how this works, who's in what position, who do you talk to if you have this problem, if this is what your rights are, just to educate the public so that when we do go in as an individual, we're not sitting there going, okay, like the deer with the headlights, and I don't know how to do this. It would be really good, I think, for our county to become educated.
Currently, the comptroller provides some excellent resources. They have some YouTubes and some methods that, what you should present, where you can get the data, and things like that. And Fawn, I have a lot of respect for Fawn. She has provided those type of classes. Now, I don't know about the scope and how far it's reached, but I did go to a class, not really a class, but it was sort of like a presentation, public outreach, where she had her chief appraiser go through how they do the evaluations, how would be a good way for a citizen to put on a presentation. And it was well attended. There was probably 7,500 people there, because people are very interested. And as far as my protest goes, every year I go several days to listen to the proceedings to try to make my presentation better. But it's just overwhelming how many people just don't know how to put on a good presentation.
Yeah.
And the things they argue, it's like shooting ducks in the barrel for the ARB, because the people don't present facts, they just present, feelings or, whatever, and they can't accept that kind of information.
I think as citizen members, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I'll tell you, I moved here from a state that reassesses your property like once every 10 years. There's a thing called an equalization ratio. When that gets below 50%, you're ordered to do a complete reassessment of the entire town. The dollars raised, in taxes, the amount to be raised in tax has to be exactly the same. I mean, I know this like whole other entire set of rules. And when I first moved here, we closed on our house the end of December, and when we got our notice, our house went up $100,000. In like, hello, that was the time of the notice. Wasn't it supposed to be a January 1 value? And we closed on like December 23rd. So in 7 days, my house went up $100,000. I didn't know anything that you protest. My son-in-law is the one who said, you got to protest that. I went, what? He says, no, every year you protest your taxes, every year. That's what he said. But I had no idea. We have so many people coming into Bastrop County from other states, and they're not going to know if they come from the state that I came from. They're going to have the same thing in their head that I do. If they come from California, that's going to be a whole different thing, because they had Prop 13, and so
That sounds like there ought to be some organization have a seminar for newcomers to Bastrop.
Maybe some organization should do that. But I do think that your comment about training is really, really important, because people, it's particular terminology. Even people who have been here don't really know, but you definitely have so many newbies coming in from so many different places that I think that would be helpful. And if you want to run one here, let me know.
Well, we need to know the structure of the appraisals, who has what authority.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're, as you said, that's in a barrel.
Right.
And Fawn did give a good presentation. She brought in several members of her staff, like Leslie, and I forgot the appraiser's name, another woman. They did a really good job. Yeah, she would be a good person to speak.
Good. All right. Well, I just said to Ellen, we look at putting something together there. I think that would be very helpful. All right, we're 2 minutes over. Uh-oh.
Can we speak on behalf of a candidate, in favor of a candidate?
Can you hear one of the candidates Of the three that I read?
Yes, no, one of the three is standing right here.
Oh, well, okay, if you want to speak on behalf of a candidate, I suppose I'd allow that to happen.
I've known Bruce Manfield 5+ years. We met when we were both founding members of a small group of patriots known as the Concerned Citizens of Bastrop. That's Bruce Manfield. He's not a political animal. He's a concerned citizen of Bastrop. Through my business dealings with him in his current business, which is highly regulated, federally overreached. I could go on, but anyway, he goes by the books. It doesn't matter who you are, how much stroke you have, what the situation is, rules, regulations, laws, and he's going to go by that. I guarantee you. So I have no doubt that Bruce Manfield is position 3 on the ARB to serve the citizens, landowners, homeowners of Bastrop County very well.
Make sure your check is in the mail.
It'll bounce.
It'll bounce, what? I would like to thank the three that sent me something to read to y'all, and these three. There's a couple candidates who are here, and y'all know this is not easy, and especially when you're just a citizen who says, I don't mean just a citizen, but you know what I mean, who just goes, hello, I'm not involved in the political world, I want to come do this. And then not only did I say they have to speak, but I also said, I'm recording you, and it's going to be on our YouTube channel. It's going to be on our YouTube channel, so anyway, I'm going to stop.